Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. The record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
The record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.
Good morning and welcome to For the Record, whether you're here in the Cayman Islands or if you're listening overseas via the web. And I will renew my call this morning for all of those of you who are in the northeast and the southeast, where you have all of that snow on the ground and more to come and dipping temperatures. Get on that Cayman Airways website, book your ticket, head on down to the warm, sunny Cayman Islands. If you're a Caymanian in general and you're living overseas, what they call them, the diaspora, or some people pronounce it diaspora, some people say the diaspora. Whether you're the diaspora or the diaspora, come on down to the Cayman Islands. Join your friends and families. Most of you don't even have to worry about hotel rooms. You can just stay with family and friends. So my good old friend, Clarence Forbes and family, come on down. Close up the house and come down until the snow melts, and then you can go back up. Have friends in Tampa as well. Rex Forbes, may not get snow up there, but whenever you get that chance, jump on Cayman Airways and come on down. I was watching Squawk Box this morning on CNBC, and one of the figures on there, they said in travel-related expenses, Americans spent 147 point something billion dollars last year for travel. We hope a lot of that was spent here in the Cayman Islands. Then, of course, on Radio Cayman in the news this morning, we heard quotations from the Minister of Tourism, Honorable Moses Colonel, and Deputy Premier, talked about the high tourism figures for last year. We're not necessarily expecting to exceed it this in 2015, but if we can stay around around the figures, it will be good for the Cayman Islands. So whether you're listening overseas or you're here in the Cayman Islands, we want to thank you for allowing us into your homes, into your offices, into your vehicles as you traverse the roads of the Cayman Islands to your workplace. Thanks very much for allowing For the Record. And of course, For the Record is a show produced by the staff and management of Radio Cayman. It started less than a year ago. May of this year will be 1 year since it started. And it was a show designed specifically to keep you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. I hope and I trust and I do believe that we are fulfilling our promise to keep you abreast of what's happening on the local, regional, and international scene. And of course, you're always welcome to join me on For the Record every Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 7:30 a.m. until 9:30 a.m. to join in the discussions about local, regional, and international issues. And of course, I have two persons in the studio with me this morning who are always willing and able to assist in that discussion. They themselves are becoming superstars in the talk show field in the Cayman Islands, not only for talk show, but for television, not only for radio talk show, but for television as well. And what I've said to them this morning is that they're going to have to start to pay me agent fees now, because everyone is clamoring to get them on their show, because what they have to say is, of course, always very dynamic, very engaging, sometimes controversial, but always the truth. And those two gentlemen that I'm talking about this morning, they are Mr. Alan Steve McField, prominent local attorney, and Mr. Christopher Saunders, who is a CPA employed in the financial services industry, and as his friends have told him, he better find another job soon because otherwise I'll let him relate that to you. But gentlemen, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, Mr. For the Record, O.C. Connor. It's always a pleasure to be here. I always wait for your call when you call, and anytime you call, as long as I'm alive and well, I will be here with you.
Thank you, Mr. Markfield. Chris.
Morning, guys, and it's great to be here with Stephen and yourself. I just want you to know up front, if Moose is listening, that 3-1 play 4 haunted me last night. But that's a different story. But
Yes.
no, it's great to be here, and it's always good where, I mean, you can sit back, have a conversation. I like listening to Mr. Markfield. I mean, his historical context of so many things makes it easier for us to understand not just why we are where we are, but also a good starting point in terms of how we can move forward from where we are. So it's always good to have that vast knowledge sitting to my right.
Right. And folks, I want to remind you also that we have a new sponsor on our show now. And you will have heard the commercials in that regard. And that new sponsor is LED Lighting. Light emitting diodes is what LED normally stands for in the industry. They're located in an industrial park. They were first brought to my attention when I went to one of our local stores, A.L. Thompson's, and I was looking for some lighting, and the salesperson there suggested that I go to more efficient lighting system, and of course they didn't have the right length fluorescent tube that I was looking for, and they referred me to LED lighting. And when I stepped into that store, I was amazed by the amount of products that they had in there, all related to energy saving as well as security. So I can personally attest to the products that they sell because I have purchased some. The LED lights, much clearer, you get much better visibility, for them as well. So you should go in there and talk to the people at LED Lighting, and they have many suggestions that they can give you in terms of energy saving on your electric bills. Just because the bills are expected to go down somewhat since January, when the 25-cent reduction on the fuel for CUC was put in place, doesn't mean that you should now just go ahead and be reckless in terms of how you treat your energy needs. And that also goes for the gasoline as well. Just because the price is down doesn't mean that you should drive more. Encourage you to walk as much as you can. Good for your health as well. And for those of you who like to put the pedal to the metal, ease up on the accelerator a little bit. You burn less gas. I don't know if you realize it, but you'll burn less gas if you don't, gun your vehicles, as well. So we are extremely thankful to have LED Lighting on board as our sponsor as well. Today, I don't want to keep you in suspense. Today, we're going to talk about the whole concept of political assistance, political patronage as it comes to appointments to statutory boards and government companies. We're not going to discuss, or we're going to try to stay away from discussing any specific case, but of course the case that is highlighted at this point in time, which is the dismissal of the Premier's political assistant because of charges being brought in the courts against him. But we want to talk about that whole concept of political assistance, because some people seem to think that it is a new phenomenon in the Cayman Islands, and whereas the terminology may be new and the openness of hiring political assistance may be new, it is something that was probably in place a long time ago, and we will get the historical perspective from that, from Mr. Steve Markfield as well. So before we go there, let's take a look at some of the headlines. Of course, earlier you heard on Radio Cayman the talk about the tourism figures by the Honorable Minister for Tourism, Mr. Moses Colonel and Deputy Premier. We look at the Caymanian compass and we see the the headline feeling luc.ky domain names for sale, and the ICTA have now indicated that businesses will have to pay to register websites with a Cayman domain name under the new rules, which will see .ky internet addresses sold worldwide. And it looks like it'll cost you about US $40 annually for a registration fee, and that extends not only to the private sector and individuals, but also to government as well. Few Bordentown affordable homes occupied. When you see the headline, it could be a little concerning at first, but it seems as if the occupation is moving forward. Some have already occupied, some are waiting for their bank loans to be approved, and it seems as if at the end of the day all of the homes should be occupied. Long time coming, but eventually it'll get here. What else? Road outside Strand finally gets repaired. That Canal Point Road has always been a bumpy road. I'm not sure if at one point in time it was a private road, but ever since the access from the Esther Tibbetts Highway on there, it appears as if it has been public now, and it is in need of serious repair, so that is being done. And of course, you would have heard here on For the Record on Wednesday morning in our discussions with MLAs Arden McLean and Ezard Miller, we talked about the need for repairs on the Cayman Kai Road, as well as the East End Road and the road in the Eastern District, starting from the police station in Bordentown, going all the way up. And it appears as if government is well on their way to getting that done as well, because a few weeks ago we saw tenders requests for tenders to do those roads were advertised in the newspapers as well. So we're going to be talking about several things this morning, but mainly we're going to be talking about political analysts, the whole concept. And before we get into that conversation, we're going to go to a break now. So, folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Stuart Connor, and my guest in the studio with me this morning, we have Mr. A. Steve McFeel, prominent local attorney who has to be in court at 10 o'clock this morning, so we're going to have to get him away early. And we also have Mr. Christopher Saunders, who is a CPA, and also what should I say, budding politician, ran in the 2013 general elections and will probably run in 2017. Again, please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Stuart Connor. As I said earlier, my guests in the studio with me this morning, we have Mr. Steve McFeel and Mr. Christopher Saunders. We have one caller online already, so let's take that caller. We're not sure what he has to say, whether or not he or she has to say, whether or not it has to do with the topic, but we're going to take him anyway. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, O.C.
Good morning, ma'am. How are you?
I'm doing great, although I'm very painful. Still, I'm so grateful.
That's
and
very good.
Good morning to Mr. Maxfield and Mr. Saunders.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning.
Dear.
Good morning. Mm-hmm. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Go right ahead.
Good morning to Mr. Maxfield and Mr. Saunders.
Good morning, madam. Good morning to you.
Morning,
I
dear.
love to hear. Listen, I had a feeling that it could be the 200, and after I heard OC say that he's too permanent, whatever, now he's going to be on there. I was holding for 7 minutes and 22 seconds, and then I decided to hang up and call back. And I told the fella there, I said, listen to me, I won't be the first caller on. You hear what I say?
Well, you are. There you are.
So listen good to me now. OC, you did mention Mr. Forbes. That's in Tampa.
And his wife. I didn't mention her, but his wife also.
Him. A Mr. that's in Tampa.
Uh-huh.
Your best friend or one of your best friends.
Yep.
And I want to say publicly now over the radio, Cayman Talk, for the record show this morning, a very, very big congratulations on him getting one of those National Heroes Awards.
Yep, in the medical field, yes.
Yes, sir, because listen, he got a certificate so he can plaster a wall, you know.
I know.
Yeah. And, what else no? My computer just gone on overdrive. You said you didn't want to talk too much about that topic that is on now about Mr. Ryan.
Right. We
But what I
no
want
no
to say
doubt
is-
it will be mentioned, but we want to talk more about the concept than about the particular case.
Yes, OC, but listen good to this, you know. I want to say just a couple of words on that. I don't make it long.
Okay.
I said the PPM, that poor people mistake. I said they have been getting a whipping before, but they are out to get a bigger whipping now. If I don't understand what I mean.
It certainly could have political implications, serious political
Yeah.
implications.
Look at this is only the beginning of that. And well, I want to say a little congratulations too also to the Health City on their first anniversary of being open, and then next of opening, and next month now will be the first anniversary of them starting to take in their patients.
Okay.
And OC and Mr. Maxfield and Mr. Sanders, I am outpatient 515 since August last year.
Okay, yep. You did talk about that and your referrals
enough.
a few times
But
on the
listen to
show.
me now. I could have had my procedure done from December, but I must mention this young. Clinical is still holding up progress, but I'm going, God's willing, I will have my procedure done next month.
That's good to hear. Good
Excellent.
to hear.
Good to hear, and you all have a good day, and I'm going to be listening to Anna because listen to me now. I only listen to Radio Cayman. Hear what I say though.
That's a loyal listener.
Yes, sir.
When
And
Radio
OC,
Cayman gives out their awards, you're going to make sure you're on top of the list.
listen to me. Yeah. OC.
Yes, ma'am.
I need to ask you how many miles of cycling did you do in Cuba?
We rode 525 kilometers in 6 days. We
Wow.
average probably around about 55 kilometer miles, 55
Wow.
miles per day.
Need an award too. Anyway, have a good day, and
Thank-
I will be listening.
Thank you. You please do the same as well. Thank you very much.
Bye bye now.
Another caller, Paul. One more caller online. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, OC.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, and good morning to your panel.
Good morning, ma'am.
Morning.
I wonder if, I don't know what subject you're on, I just tuned in, but I got a few things I'd like to say. If I'm inappropriate, you can let me know and call back another day, I guess.
No, we're going to talk about the whole concept of political assistance. The appointment of people to statutory boards and government companies and things of that nature. But if you have another issue that you want to raise, go right ahead.
Okay, well, I will start off at this one first. Could you speak about the riders on the road? They want to ride shoulder to shoulder, and we don't have the roads for that. And some mornings coming down, you don't care how much you blow them or flash your lights. They totally ignores you and doesn't want to make space for you to drive across them. So I would like to just announce it that, riders, respect the cars like how they're trying to respect you guys on the road as well.
And when you talk about cyclists, now you're talking about the person who's just riding to work, or these are recreational cyclists?
This is the riders, some of your buddies and some not your buddies,
Okay,
riders.
okay.
There's guys out there who's exercising. I'm not against it, don't get me wrong, 'cause I love to ride too. It's just that some mornings they refuse to, give you the space for you to cross them to get where you're going. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay. What I want to say about three things. Oh, see, I don't know when we can get our protection law. Is there such a thing back in this island? Caymanians are firing Caymanians. You imagine a Caymanian in a job for 8 to 10 years, and you just come on one morning and say, we no longer need your service. We're not going to renew your contract. I'm just talking, and you can give the viewpoint afterwards, because I want to get everything in, okay?
Okay, yeah. And then,
You know, and it is so unfair to, I mean, we don't have any way to go. We have to live here. And what is this about retiring a Caymanian at the age of 60 when you still got sometime 10 years, 5 years, 6 years mortgage left on your house? You probably got 1 or 2 kids left in school.
You must have been reading my mind on that one, because that was one of the issues I wanted to discuss, and was going to query as to whether or not the legislation was going to be brought to the LA in April in relation to increasing the age of retirement for government employees.
You know, see, it is ridiculous. You go to America and you can find an 80-year-old old woman trying to sell you a pair of shoes. I mean, as long as we healthy and good and going here, why can't they give us till 65 or even more, whatever it takes to get our bills up and to survive without going to social service? You know what I mean? And another thing, I heard you mention something about the tourism, you know, how it's
the tourism figures for last
so
year.
Forth.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But also, let me just say this. You have to be out here to know what is going down. You're sitting in an office getting figures from an individual. That don't mean nothing. Or see, you bringing a boat in here, got 500 people on it in the middle of the day. And when you go there, they got 300 and change pre-book. And the boat only brought in 483 on it. Then you have another ship comes in with 114 on it, and 100 of them is pre-book. I mean, come on. Your figures may be looking good for government because of the high tax, but what about the taxi drivers in the hotels and the other people that's on this island who are trying to make a dollar from these cruise ships when they come into this port?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Or see, another thing, 28 days in the month of February, you make $2,000 and divide that by 28 days. What you getting? $76 US per day.
Mm-hmm.
Convert that to Cayman dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, see, out here is a joke with this tourism. It is a joke, and it's not because you don't have any dock. Or see what the problem is. You got people going to the cruise ship and booking people to go here and there. And some of those guys don't even have a bus to put these people on. They got to go look in buses at the end of the day to put these people on to go and do this tour that they so charge $80 for on the cruise ship.
Question, do we have enough taxis and drivers out there that can really, really service all of the passengers coming off the cruise ship? It would appear to me as if, there's a little bit for everyone.
Or see, we have lots of taxis. We got just about 90 or just came aboard just last year. There's lots of taxis out here, but they doesn't want to use the 14-seaters. They doesn't want to use the 6-seaters, the 7-seaters. They are too small. They're going to waste so much time taking them from A point to B point and all that kind of stuff. They want these big buses, which I'm not against, don't get me wrong. But the facts remain, they're booking these people and don't have any buses half the time to put them on there or looking buses. And some of these 30-seaters doesn't want to go and take these pre-books from these people because they got to wait so long for their pay, and they're not getting the full head of the person for the tour that they will go and do themselves on the island.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And another thing, they goes on the cruise ship and pre-books to wear the beach.
Uh-huh. This may be anecdotal, but I had a friend of mine was telling me about this person who drives a taxi, and she said, "Oh, I'm finished work for the day. I'm heading to the beach. I've made my certain amount of dollars for the day, and that's good enough for me." I had one of the ministers, not a minister, but a politician, mention to me that a taxi driver said to him, don't always listen to all of the complaints that you're getting out there from these drivers. He said, I made $90,000 for the year. $90,000 driving a taxi. That is good money.
Oh, see?
Mm-hmm.
See? If he made $90,000 for the year, I take my hat off to him because he worked 24/7. Or when we home sleeping, he are still running the road.
No, he didn't. It didn't appear that way. It didn't appear that way.
We got taxi drivers who run the road all night and go and park in the hotel 5 o'clock in the morning, take airport trips to go home and take a quick break and come back on the road again. Oh, see, I don't have anything against that. If he made $90,000 for the year, I take my hat off to him very much. And I wonder if he's just a regular taxi. Is he a tour operator? And we got 30-seaters that are licensed to tour, and they are doing tour beach trips. Nothing wrong with it, don't get me wrong. But the point is out here, we are all, what McKeever Bush said, a bunch of crabs in a basket. We got everybody fighting against each other. Nobody can come together and say we're going to run this taxi the way it's supposed to be run. More professional is being done. We got this one, don't like this one because it's from another country and all that yakety yak. Some come out here with a quote. If they come out and say they come to make $500 a day, they make that $500
and then they go home. Yeah, but I'm going to ask you to leave us there though, because we have to go to the news now. We're 1 minute before 8 o'clock. We have to go to the news, but certainly feel free to call back later on if you want to continue this conversation. Thanks very much, Jan. Take care. Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorit Connor. My guest in the studio with me this morning, we have Mr. Steve MacPhail and Mr. Christopher Saunders. We're going to get onto the topic of the whole idea of political advisors, political assistants in government in general, and not specifically as much as possible. Please stay tuned. We'll be back. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorit Connor. My guest in the studio with me this morning, Mr. Steve MacPhail and Mr. Christopher Saunders. News and sports was a little bit long this morning, but we still have until 9:30, so we're going to get the ball rolling. We're going to still be talking about the concept of political analysts, but before we get to that, we have another caller online, so we're going to take that caller because they've been holding for a while. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Yes, see, I had to call you back. Just give me 3 minutes, please.
No, two, maybe two.
2 minutes?
Yeah,
okay,
two.
The taxi driver that made that kind of money, it had to be in Jamaica dollars. And furthermore, also, we have a season. We're going to have 6 months of slow season and 6 months of busy season. And there's no taxi driver in the Cayman Islands make that kind of money. They are lying. These taxi drivers up here was listening to the radio, and they all come swarming me. You know that is not true. I'm not saying that I make some money now. Don't get me wrong. But they ain't making that kind of figure for 1 year. Even if they had their own tour bus the size of Dart bus.
I can only say that the person told that, and it was third-hand information that I was getting.
I know, but it's nowhere in the world that can happen in this tourism right now. Probably many years ago they probably could do, but not today with so many taxis on the road.
No, he was talking about last year.
No, see, not under the sun. Not under the sun. Not under the sun. But anyhow, I gotta say, for us Caymanians to be on a job, we need to close down the permit department in immigration at least for 6 months a year to get these 2,000 people here in Cayman who needs a job rapidly. Close the permit department down for a while because that is what ruining our island, and that's why all our governments keep looking for money from that department to build this and unbuild that. We don't need to disenfranchise our own Caymanians of a job in this island.
I think we're all in agreement with that, and it is something that we will continue to harp on in terms of the employment situation in Cayman and the work permit. Chris, I believe you want to make some comments on that.
Yeah, no, I every time I listen to Miss John, you can pretty much hear the frustration, and I think what really bothers me the most in this entire process is that we have not done enough to get our own people opportunities in these countries. I can tell you personally, I have a fundamental problem with the way that entire tour operator thing is set up. And the one thing that I saw with my own two eyes one morning that we really brought it home when I was going in real early one morning for a conference call, and coming down like around 5 something, maybe around close to 6 in the morning, I saw a tender coming off the ship. And I'm like, where is this tender going so early in the morning? I mean, who's coming off so early? OC, it was bicycles that won that tender. And I remember saying to myself, goodness gracious, you mean to tell me that a Caymanian can't even get the business of providing a bicycle for these tour ships? We are looking to invest a lot of money in cruise tourism. And I know this is something that most people don't like for me to say, but I gotta be honest with you. I can't support spending $250, $300 million for a dock that's going to basically be the benefit of 3-4 families. And that's the God's honest truth. When I pass out there and I see people holding up the sign, begging people to come take a tour just so they can feed their family for the day, that's just not right. I mean, there was a report that the Florida Cruise Ship Association did back in, well, the figures were based on 2010 figures. And it was reported that of the $2 billion that was spent within the Caribbean, Cayman was at number 5. Bahamas was number 1 at $400 million. And Cayman was at number 5 with $156 million thereabouts being spent per annum in the Cayman Islands. And when you start breaking that money down in terms of how much was being spent, like on duty free, because it was a comprehensive report, what percentage was being spent on tours, what was being spent on different activities, you realize that there's a lot of money to be made. But the problem is we're not making it. And if you look at the way the demographics of the waterfront is and the way they set up now, it is the big businesses squeezing out the small businesses. And in a situation that we have here, where the government definitely needs to step in and do something to protect these people, because it can't be a situation where the rich is just getting richer and the poor people are just basically struggling and suffering every day.
Mr. McFrey, we mentioned earlier, and you gave us the name of the organization that has some government support. What is it called?
Land and Sea Co-op.
Yes. What would be their role in this? Because it does say land and sea. As far as the land part of things, do they do anything to assist the taxi drivers? Do they help them to form any sort of having an organized group?
I don't know. I think they're supposed to, but I don't know if that really happens. But we're sort of going backwards, because in the early 70s, we had a taxi association that was organized, and
Mr. Ira Walton.
Ira Walton was the head of that. It was organized, and it had a lot of support from the government of the day. Mr. Jim Bodden, I remember, was supporting him. I remember one time I went to a meeting at Mr. Jim Bodden's office, and the whole taxi fleet was there, and people had their grievances, and he heard them. But it seems to me that what the taxi people need to do is they need to select one of their own to act as their ambassador to the cruise ship lines, and to go and to make contracts for them, and to get bookings for them for their own selves. Because from the mere fact where they're located, I mean, if people look at how they are situated physically, they are pushed back to the back. They're up near the airport, and the action is downtown. Is downtown and the seaport, and that was done deliberately to keep them in the back. And I mean, this is how our Georgetown was situated from the beginning. The poor people stayed in the back, and the well-to people and the successful people was in the front.
Out on the waterfront.
On the waterfront. And I mean, people ought to start realizing their situation. But it's not going to get any better until when we come together and pool the resources and have someone to represent them who has the knowledge and stuff of bookings and management and stuff to manage them. And then what they should do is that to highlight, they should take industrial action. I mean, calling on the radio and all that sort of stuff is good, because a lot of people will get to hear your grievances, but sometimes you have to stand and do something about it. I mean, you need to go to places like Falmouth and Montego Bay and all those places in the Bahamas, and you see that will never happen to them. They will shut the port down, and people will not be able to move. But you see, what we do is that we cry a lot, and we're not willing to take the responsibility that we have to take. I don't know much about the taxi business, but I pass and see them holding up the signs and trying to cajole people to go with them, and I wonder why would they have to do that? The tourists come here for them to help make the money. And I mean, when you go to other places like Bahamas and Jamaica, everybody gets a piece of that dollar. Everybody gets a piece of that. That dollar is split in so many ways that you have to say, gee, what an amazing setup they have here. But the tourist industry, the whole tourist industry, the cruise ship industry was not developed with the poor people in mind to make money from it. That was not the intention of it. And the poor people ought to understand that, and they ought to start to fight back. They ought to start to fight back through organizing themselves.
Yeah, and we know that the taxi drivers are listening. Ms. Janice told us that. What would be interesting to know is if they can tell us what is the Land and Sea Corp doing to assist the taxi drivers? What is their role in terms of their organization as well? Mr. Macfield, I know that during one of our commercial breaks you got a call, and since we still have about a little over an hour to go on the show, maybe we can put this on the air, and those who are listening can explain to either call in or otherwise, and I have an explanation as well, but that may not be satisfactory, to call in to respond to the omission of two names in terms of the awards on Heroes Day. Just before we do that, though, we're advised that our streaming audio is down, so those who listen online via computer would not be hearing us at this point in time. We're going to have some suggestions in terms of what they should do to remedy that situation. But go right ahead, Mr.
Yeah,
Macfield.
Mr. Brand Bush gave me a call afterward, and he was concerned about the fact that when he saw the list that came out for National Heroes Day to award those people who had made contribution to the health and
medical profession,
profession in the Cayman Islands, that Dr. Conley, I think who his last name was not mentioned, and Nurse Bush was not mentioned. I think that she was a nurse here for many, many years until she died. And he said that that was a serious omission, and he wanted to know what could be done about it. And I told him I would mention it to you, the host, and that perhaps you would say something about it on the radio.
And of course, one of the explanations that we've gotten, and I'm only repeating what has been said, is that because of the fact that people were urged to nominate persons that may have seemed to be the reason for the omission, but it seemed also that while nominations may have been accepted, that there were also other ways that people were recognized due to the fact that people knew that they were involved in the medical profession. Unfortunately, sometimes we have the generation now doesn't necessarily know all of the names of the others, and that's why it's so important for us to rely on our older folks in so many other ways. Someone talked about the fact that I think it was one of our callers, may have been Miss Jan, or someone talked about the fact that older people can still contribute, and you go to other countries and you see them working, in shopping malls and stuff like that, in those huge department stores that they're working. And one of the reasons for that is, number one, their knowledge, and number two, their reliability. They are reliable.
Right.
You can count on them showing up to work every day.
And some of those countries now are moving the retirement age to 67, to 67. And I thought that we would have had that law in place already, because that was talked about last year and the year before, and nothing has been done about it. And a lot of the older people with the knowledge and the skill, and I've been pastured out. And the unfortunate thing about it is, in some of those other countries, you have the younger people that are coming, that are waiting in line to take over and to improve on that knowledge. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem like that's happening in Cayman Islands.
Yep.
And so we're losing a lot of stuff. We're losing a lot of knowledge, and we're losing a lot of human power. And I urge the government to start putting the bill before the legislature to raise the age of retirement to 67 years.
Yep. Folks, you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Stuart Connor. My guests in the studio with me this morning, we have Mr. Christopher Saunders and Mr. Steve McPhail. I'm going to mention some names here. Edward Johnson, Michael Johnson, Dashi, Edmund Seymour, Cheryl Gorin, Steve McPhail. And you may wonder why I am mentioning those names. When we come back, we'll ask the question, were they considered political assistants in their era? Please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Stuart Connor. My guests in the studio with me, Mr. Steve McPhail and Mr. Christopher Saunders. Before we get on to our topic, I just want to say that Lime is having some difficulties. Our streaming audio is down, but there is an alternative. And if you listen carefully, and I'll probably repeat it a second time for you, you can log on to www.tunein. That is one word, TUNEIN.com. Then you select location, the location North America, then the Caribbean and the Cayman Islands, and then you can then link on to Radio Cayman. So if you're not getting the streaming audio, go to www.tunein.com. TuneIn is one word, TUNEIN.com. Select the location, which is North America, then the Caribbean, and then the Cayman Islands. Now, Mr. McPhail, I mentioned some names earlier. I mentioned Dashi, Edward and Michael Johnson, Edmund Seymour, Cheryl Goring, and yourself. Now, when we look at one of the definitions of political assistant and a job description of it, it says political assistants provide administrative support to elected politicians. They also help with secretarial tasks, research, and publicity. They can work for members of parliament, and in our case, members of our legislative assembly. Politicians' assistants may be referred to sometimes as parliamentary or constituency assistants, depending on where they are based. Sometimes they're referred to as personal assistants, research assistants, case workers, or sometimes even executive secretaries. In the day and age when a lot of the politics were conducted on the street politics, door to door. We didn't have internet, but we had the Mile Road.
That's right.
These gentlemen were extremely active
And valuable.
and valuable, and they got paid for it too. No
That's
one
right,
probably
that's right.
knew that, but they got
right.
paid, and sometimes they may have even played both sides of the fence as well. But
that's
I'll
right.
let you give us some details about their activities.
Yes, and the names that you called, for instance, they even work for particular politicians. I remember the Johnson brothers. I mean, they were Linford Pearson's men, and Cheryl Gorin too.
Mm-hmm.
And you had people like Edmund Seymour, who was Ira Walton's man, man, and myself too. I was Jim Borden's and Mr. Ormond Panton's man.
Okay.
I went from door to door, from house to house, from street to street to try to get them elected.
And you had people like
And,
Ellsworth Terry as well.
As well, and other people, but it was quite different then. It was quite different then. We were not on contract, although it was sort of a verbal agreement between the politicians and ourselves, but we were not on any formal contract to get paid. We never got paid from the government. You see, that's the difference between our positions and the modern positions now. The politicians were the one who gave us money to go and to help them get elected and to do their work in the constituency. But we were not on a government payroll. We were not on a payroll in which we received money from the government, and that brings the whole definition of the offices that you just referred to. is the office to the leader of the country, or is it to the party? Because there seems to me to be a difference. I mean, when I was the assistant to the Honorable Premier McKeever Bush, I had a contract that says that I was a legal and senior political assistant to him, but I never did any work for the party. And if you notice, during my tenure there, I never went on any platform or spoke on any political platform. My job was to represent him abroad before the United Nations, to the overseas countries and territories meetings, to help him draft legislation. Things like I did was like drafted legislation for the district councils. Myself and Leonard Dilbert, and advised him on things about pension, and gave opinions. And when I went abroad to represent the country overseas, I did reports to the cabinet. But I didn't go out into the districts to organize on behalf of the party. That seems to be a different,
because it would be improper to use public funds to do that. Exactly. And so, but assistance to the head of state or to the head of government is ancient. I was reading just the other night. I was going over the old scriptures, and I was reading about Joseph and his brothers. And when they had the famine in Canaan and they went to Egypt, remember they had put their brother in the well, they had sold him, and he became the assistant to Pharaoh. He was Pharaoh's assistant with all the power of the state and stuff. So Joseph with the coat of many colors.
That's right. So it seems to me that what has happened now is that I was surprised when I heard all of the things said on another radio station about the person who lost his job as a assistant, that his job was actually organizing on behalf of the party, organizing in the parties. I think that's what it wasn't that how it was put. That
I wasn't
that most of what he did was organizing on behalf of the party, because I think there was something about the premier saying that the reason why he had to let him go was because the constituencies issues were being neglected. Well, I didn't work with the constituencies when I was assistant to the premier. I worked for his office as premier. You see, that's the difference. I worked in the premier's office doing I worked for the premier and his office as premier, not in his office as leader of the party.
Okay. I'm told that we have two callers on line. We're going to continue the trend of thought that Mr. Steve Macfield is on. But before we continue, let's take those callers. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, good. Good morning, Steve, and good morning with Steve. And who else you got on?
Chris Saunders.
Oh, Chris.
The usual suspects.
Yeah, the usual suspects. Okay. Well, it's a good suspect. Let's put it that way. Yeah, I wanted to ask a question. I was reading the paper yesterday, and I saw they were talking about the new voting, the districts, this voting districts they expect to have hopefully next election. And they mentioned you, Steve, and with Webb, and they had a lady there, Dr. Lisa Hanley. But she's in Baltimore. Is she a Cayman, or is she living in, but I mean, I don't understand why is she a Cayman? Is she living in Baltimore? That's what they said, she's in Baltimore.
No, she's an American. She's American. Yeah, she works internationally with this kind of work, helping people set up their boundaries, boundary commissions. Yeah, she's an expert in that sort of stuff.
Oh, okay. Because I was kind of confused about why would she be living in Baltimore, and I figured that she's the Cayman would be here. But
yeah, no, she's just contracted for it. And caller, I should say that I believe that the governor's first choice would have been Mr. Carl Dundas, but he was unavailable, and she comes with strong recommendations
Yes.
from Mr. Carl Dundas, who was a
Well,
previous commissioner.
well, I'm just curious because I didn't quite understand it because I'm always like you have. I mean, when you go to one of the things that I can tell you, and I say another that really bothered me was when they brought in the little guy there, this Mr. Holland from New York to head of the labor department here, and according to the online information I got, he had no real background in labor. He's an architect, as is what they said there. I don't understand, where we can find someone a little closer with probably a lot more background on that, but still I do, I guess, Anyway. You guys have a good day. God bless you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So when we look at some of the in a job description for political assistance, responding to inquiries from constituents, that's some of the things that they do. Undertake administrative duties, carry on research into local, regional, and national, international issues as required, arrange surgeries for constituencies and offering support on the day. And surgeries means, meetings,
Yes.
where the politician will go there, set a date and a time to meet with individuals, monitoring and arranging media coverage, assisting with campaigns before and during elections, keeping up to date with current affairs, updating the politician's website, monitoring and arranging media coverage, I said that before, liaising with members of government, helps with speeches by researching information and making suggestions on content. So, various things that the political assistant would do. Now, on Wednesday, in my discussions with Mr. McLean and Mr. Miller, I was trying to get the argument forward that their argument was that you have your local constituency office.
Yes.
That is paid for by government.
That's right.
And you have your support staff there. My argument was that here you have a premier who has responsibilities, has taken on additional responsibilities as well. And no matter how you may try to filter the calls, the inquiries that come into that office and try to remove the political aspects of it and say, listen, you need to go to my constituency office to deal with that, it is extremely difficult to do that. One of the things that you don't want to happen is you don't want civil servants to be taking those calls and those inquiries. First of all, they're going to complain it is not their job and it would be improper for them to do that. So it is good to have someone in that office who can, where the political aspects are separated from the administrative aspects, and you have someone there to deal with that. So I think it is quite justifiable that you need to have a political assistant in your office as not necessarily a minister, but at least the leader of the government. And there may be a strong argument for ministers to have it as well, depending on their responsibilities. So
I
it
think
was
so.
a concept that was developed in the Cayman Islands, and it is one that I think has a lot of merit to it.
Well, I think so, but you notice that in the first premier's office, because I think you were one of the people to Mr. Connor Orrit, who was helping to define the premier's office, develop
Right,
what the
yes,
premier's
yes.
office should be. And the premier also has a personal assistant, which is different from a personal advisor, a personal assistant. Remember, the personal assistant now is the one who would do all of those things, liaison between the premier and his constituency.
Right.
That
And
is what
a
the
lot of
personal assistant
correspondence
with
and stuff like
correspondence
that.
and
Yes.
things like that. And then he also has a chief of staff, which was Mr. Dilbert.
Right.
Yes.
Yep.
And many heads of government and heads of state have their own chiefs of staff. But when it comes on the political advisors, that's a different role.
Yes.
That is a completely different role. And like I did, the stuff that you said just now, help with speeches, advise on letters came in, how to reply to them, and things like that.
And research.
I did a lot of research and a lot of drafting. So I don't know what Mr. Bryan's contract said that he was supposed to do, because the personal assistant, the chief of staff, and the personal advisor is completely different.
Yes.
But I just want to chime in here a little bit, and I think the challenge is, I think what is really has made this, I guess, such a public issue is, I guess, just the hypocrisy of the PPM government. They complained when the previous government had 2 councillors, CG and Elio.
But that's true.
So he had 5 ministers and he had 2 councillors. This coalition government has 13 members, and barring Juliana, who's speaker, and Mr. Eden, who is, I guess, just in the back bench, 11 of the 13 are either members of the cabinet or councillors. So they literally have 11 of their 13 actually doing something. And then on top of that, you also had Mr. Bryan, I think you had Mr. Tatum. I mean, pretty much a gamut. And then, of course, the consultants and the press. I mean, and the thing about it is, I guess the way in which everything was done. I mean, I'm looking at their manifesto that basically says on page 25, a government cannot lead effectively in difficult times if it is not trusted and believed. And looking at the track record in terms of the promises, 1 man, 1 vote, minimum wage, I mean, and the way in which they have handled this kind of stuff. I mean, and even complain about even like some of the dark deal and now literally continue what the previous government have done. I mean, it is almost smacks of just pure hypocrisy. And
but that might be true, Chris. But when one is appointed, or when one is hired or employed as a political assistant to a head of state or to a government, they in the forefront of your mind, you must understand it's a political appointment.
oh yeah,
Yes.
And it can be withdrawn at any time. At any
like
time.
I said, no, I agree with that. But I think the way in which the entire thing was done, where I'm just axe. I mean, it's just. But and then of course you take in the same situation now, where you had the previous issue with Ozzy in Bordentown, the way in which that was handled. I mean, he really needs to be doing a better job. I know, but that's the thing. But you take everything in one context.
But that's a different story.
We have to go to a commercial break now. We have one caller online, and we're going to ask that caller to be really patient with us. This is going to be a very short commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to take that caller immediately after the commercial break. Please stay tuned. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Stuart Connor. My guests in the studio with me this morning, we have Mr. Steve McPhail and Mr. Christopher Saunders. We have one caller online and we're going straight to that caller now. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, Mr. O.C.
Good morning, Mr. Hurston. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning to Mr. McPhail and Mr. Saunders.
Morning, Nicky.
Morning, sir. Good morning.
Yes. Well, Mr. O.C., just quickly, in the ad for your show, a little, they promoting it, you say, and the independent. I just wondered if that's the NCE or the NTS ending there. Because I really never heard any great prolonged talk about independence, the NCE.
No, we're talking about the noun independence, and referring to Mr. Miller and Mr. McLean, as opposed to the official opposition, which consists of the leader of the opposition, Mr. Bush, and his team.
Yeah, I just thought I'd throw that little bit of independence is near and dear to my heart. But anyway, I'm glad what Mr. Maxfield said about the taxi thing when he said that it's organization, and that's what happens here. You're not unified in organization. Everybody else has a taxi association, and they used to have one. I remember Styra very well. Used to have lots of talks with him. And when you mentioned about Cyril here and all that. Yes, I remember those days very well. Isn't the permanent secretaries, they're civil servants? Before, they were all sort of politically aligned because Mr. Jim, I remember, his PS was, I think, Mr. Gilbert McLean.
Yes, he was.
Am I right in that?
Yes.
Mr. McField?
Yes,
Principal
was
Secretary.
Gilbert McLean, Bunny Borden, and he had Gilbert McLean was the permanent secretary in the Department of Tourism, Aviation and Trade,
Yes,
and also
that's
Mr.
right.
Bunny Borden and Teacher McPhee was an assistant permanent secretary.
Yes. And they were all of the same sort of of Mr. Jim. They were all, I would have to say, close associate politically with him, and they were for his agenda. So it's sometimes impossible to separate the politics in this as an advisor and still be a senior civil servant. Sometimes I wonder why we have to make it that that's impossible. You can't do that. You can't be a loyal civil servant and be loyal to a party at the same time. It's so difficult here in Cayman. But in England, the civil servants can pick and choose and show their allegiance to, and that is supposed to be the colonial power.
Some civil servants, but at some levels they're not allowed to.
They're not allowed to. There in England, you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Yes, well, but I just thought that was another thing with this, with the Boundaries Commission. I just wondered what we hope to achieve by having the meetings and having the input from people. If we're looking at 18,000 voters, and in the districts that we're going to split up like West Bay here, do we expect that that the different citizens, the voters, are going to say, well, I want this boundary to run here so I can get my man in here that I want to vote for the woman? Or it's a foregone conclusion, in other words, it's going to happen. So wouldn't it be best to spend the time educating our people, saying, look, this is how it's going to be, because you could get thousands of different representations of how they want a boundary drawn if you're looking to try to involve everybody, and you wouldn't get anywhere in time for anything. Educating the people and saying, listen, the boundaries are going to be here. Your man who you vote for may lose with 350 votes, and the guy next door across the street in the other constituent will win with 175 votes, and learn to accept that before the elections come about. I just thought, to me, it will make more sense to go around educating and teaching the people this, because it's going to be a hard pill to swallow. When that happens, we might sit and say, oh, well, first past the post and first this and that. But when it actually happens, you're going to have some big conflicts out here. And people, if we don't tell people, we won't prepare them, look, you have 2 years or a year to accept this situation. This is how it's going to be. Gentlemen, have an excellent day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hurston. Before you reply to him, gentlemen, I think we have one more caller online, so let's take that caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning to the panel, Mr. Macfield and Mr. Saunders.
Good morning.
Morning, Kenneth.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure always to talk to you guys.
Good morning, Kenneth.
I had to call in to just to clarify some points about, obviously, the topic about my me being released. And that's it in itself. The fact is I was released, not fired, because my contract stated that at any point the Premier could give me 3 months' notice without reason to let me go.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously he's given a public reason to why he made that decision. My only problem with that is that I want the public to realize it has to be something that's malicious here, because if you think about the fact that, we ran together, we were side-by-side brothers, we walked the streets together throughout the campaign. I mean, I don't think there was anywhere that me and the Premier weren't together. But one would think that if we were on good terms and everything was well, and he had a legitimate reason to say, Ken, I got to let you go because I got some other duties that needs to be done, the thought would be, okay, Kenneth, listen, we know that your case is going to take a little while. We're going to hire somebody else. In the meanwhile, I just want you to know that this is going to happen. Go ahead and prepare yourself. There was no notice given to me. I was just called in like a person who was being fired, and just to know and then be told that, okay, your services are not needed anymore. If that's how you would treat your own brother, or the person who helps assist you get in the power position that you're in today, it's quite sad.
And
that's why I know it was something malicious behind it, because you have somebody fired one day or released one day, and the very next working day somebody was hired. So this thing was planned and done and thought about without any consultation with what people would call his brother, in regards to the party.
Yeah, and
so,
Kenneth, can you say when that was done, was there any indication as to looking forward, if you're exonerated in the courts, what the position would be after that?
Well, I asked that question in the meeting with the current cabinet secretary and the premier. I said, well, Premier, what will happen if I am successful in my case? And his response was, well, we'll deal with that when it comes. So, everybody has common sense and can read between the lines of what is happening here. That's the part that's upsetting for me, because I know what my contract stated. I know that possibility could have happened at any point. Like, rightfully so, what Mr. Macfield said is a political appointment, and this can go away at any point. Suppose the Premier is ousted. That doesn't mean that I have my job, because I'm at the grace of him. So if he was ousted, then I would have to go. So I'm aware of that. It's just the way that it was done that is the most upsetting thing for me and for other people. Even for Mr. Frank, who's there now, he has to be cautious himself, that he has to listen to every single word and agree with every single thing that the Premier says. Because he disagrees, he's going to say, okay, I don't want your services anymore, because of the clause of the contract states for what. He doesn't have to give a reason. He gave a reason because he knew it wasn't going to go over well with the public. He had to legitimize his release of me to some degree. And to be honest with you, because I know that release is not going over well with the public, I'm quite sure they're going to come up with some other adding factor to it, like quality job performance or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised you hear him come back with that later on, because the concept and the reason they've given the public is not going over well, and they know that.
So Kenneth, your argument would be that it would be politically tenable for him to continue just the way other civil servants are, put either on administrative leave, but they're not terminated. Simply, they await the outcome of their case before they're terminated, and you feel that you should have been treated the same way?
From a party perspective and a loyal brotherhood perspective, yes. I can understand if, like, say, for instance, the cabinet and the governor said to him, okay, well, you only had this amount of resources allocated to you as a premier for assistance. You cannot use up your budget to have somebody on leave and then hire somebody else. I can understand if that was the decision, and that's the compromising position he was in, but no discussion was done. It was not like he said, okay, Ken, we have a little problem here. Whatever the hiccup is, we're going to stay beside you. Let's get through this together. And when this is all done and you're freed from all this nonsense, you come back to the team and let's work together to fix Cayman. That was not the discussion. There was no discussion, period. Because if you think about it, he could have brought somebody in on a temporary basis. They can listen. We only have a certain budget for a political aid to the Premier. I'm going to stop your services and your salary until this is resolved. That person will be on a temporary contract until the case is over. When you win, you come back home. We all fix the Cayman Islands together, as a brother would do. When we were considered brothers together when we were fighting for each other to change the Cayman Islands.
Ken, we have to go to a break. I'm over the time now, but I want to ask you either to stay on the line or if you want to call back right after. But as you know, in this business, there are times for everything. So, but if you want to hold on the line, it will be a short break, and then we can continue this conversation. Either do that or call back. Please do.
I'll hold.
Okay, folks. You're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Stuart Connor. We're going to go to the headline news at this point in time, and we'll be back shortly. Good morning, and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Stuart Connor. My guests in the studio with me this morning, Mr. Steve Macfield and Mr. Christopher Saunders. And on the line, we have Mr. Kenneth Bryan, a former political assistant to the Premier. And while we're discussing in general terms political appointments, political assistance, we're now on the phone with Mr. Bryan discussing his particular case. Kenneth?
Yes, sir. I'm still here.
Sure. Go right ahead with your conversation now, please.
Well, I mean, I summed up my thought process in regards to how it was done, and obviously my concern that it was done in my view, a malicious way. And I want to make sure I'm clarifying that I do not believe that any other members were involved in this, because this was a sole decision by the Premier himself. But I want to make sure that they're not going to control the marketability of how this was done to make them think that you know, they had the right to do, or they were doing the right thing, because it could have been done in a different way. And one would question, if you would do this to somebody who helped you get elected, who stood by the team and what the team stood for, what would they do to anybody else, or what he would do to anybody else. And I just want to make sure that that is clarified, because it's important in regards to his leadership ability, and I'm going to stick to that fact, because I'm worried about any other Caymanian who may be in the position, because obviously, like he's told me in the meeting when he let me go, I'm a liability to his administration, for the simple fact of my case. Now, nobody knows the facts of the case, because rightfully so, it's before the courts and it cannot be discussed. But there's rumors are going around that I stood for what was right, and I believe that. And he has enough information, because he was privy to the information, because I gave him the facts and the evidence in the case. If you're going to let me go for standing for the right thing, how many other Caymanians would you bring down in this type of situation for standing for what's right? I don't regret what I did, and I will continue to fight and stand up for Caymanians, because that's what I intended to do when I ran into politics. That's the whole premise of politics, standing for what's right.
And you said what was said, that was that you're a liability to his administration.
I am a
but you weren't
liability.
serving the administration. You were there to serve him as
personally.
Personally.
Well, liability to him and his administration.
Well, Kenneth.
I think both are the same.
Well, Kenneth, listen to me now.
Yes,
Listen
sir.
to me now. You know, with all of the stories that are going around, the underlining factor. This is my opinion. The underlining factor of the breach of not the breach of you breaking your contract with them. It not only was it a political appointment, but it seems to me that the reasons why was because you had gotten arrested. Yes,
sir.
the reason why you gotten arrested. Now,
Yep.
Too much wind in your phone, Kenneth.
yeah,
He can hear you, though.
in any situation like that, what your leader should have done, a person who's given example to how the country, how the law should work in the country, is that you should have been given a chance to prove your innocence, or your innocence, or nothing should have happened to you until you were convicted of the offense on which you were charged, because there's just the principle that runs all down through the criminal law, that a man is innocent until proven guilty, and the reason why you were granted bail by the court was to preserve the presumption of your innocence. Now, if the courts could grant you bail to preserve the presumption of your innocence, but your leader has already accepted that you're not innocent, and then you fired because of that, that is the problem that I have with it, with the situation. That example was not set to the country. That example was not set to the country. That, listen, not because a man is accused of something that he must lose his job and that he must throw him out in the streets. There's the rule of law that says that certain procedure has to be upheld and to protect the person, and that was not done in your case.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly.
But let me give you a little bit of advice, and I read this down because I knew that Orit was going to talk about it this morning. It's something that, Cicero was a great statesman and lawyer in the Roman Republic. He was involved in the custom trust of the Roman political life, and this is what he said: "Power wears down those who do not know how to use it." So I would advise you to be strong and not to prostrate yourself, and to have hope, because, Kenneth, if you don't have hope, then when hope dies and hope fails you, you have to stand up and fight. You cannot lie down and be prostrate. That is what I would ask you today, because if you don't do that, you will not be an effective politician. And I would like to see you become an effective politician as a young man, but you have to understand how the game is played here in this Georgetown, Kenneth. They have used many crickless dummies to echo what they want to say, and I don't want you to be that. And Kenneth, one last thing I was want to tell you: power perceived is power achieved. Don't prostrate yourself in the public. Stand strong and bear the burden on your shoulders, and show us that you can stand up despite all of the stuff that happened to you. That will make you a great politician and a great statesman.
Kennedy, I just want to add one thing there, my friend. And don't take this the wrong way, but you, like many people in the Cayman Islands, have put your trust in the wrong government and the wrong people. So now you really know what PPM stand for. Poor people mistake.
Well, I appreciate your comments, both of you, and I want to highlight on two things. One, I'll say for Chris, because you said that, but what I believe is the Progressive stands for a lot more than what the leader is. The Progressive is an organization filled with Caymanian members who believe in something. And even if the leader makes a mistake, I think the organization should be able to hold him accountable for his mistakes and not affect the organization, because those members are Caymanians, and I refuse to make it affect them. They're Caymanians that I love. Regardless of what happens and the outcome of this, those are PPM members that I love and I care for, and that I will continue to stand for no matter what happens, because they're Caymanian. Secondly, Mr. Macfield, you said about I have to understand to learn how to play this game of politics. You are so right, but I'm so saddened by that reality, because I do not want to play a game with the future of my people. This is not a game to be played. The reality here, there are people starving in Cayman right now who can't get a job, can't pay the electricity bill, and we're playing games in politics when Caymanians should have the right to have the fruits of our labor. There's elderly people who are putting retired and they can't pay their bills because the pensions are so low. And they're still healthy and strong because they're made from good blood who can continue to work, but yet they're being forced out by our economy. This is not a game. These are people's lives, and they're my people's lives, and I refuse to play politics with people when there's people suffering. So although you are so right that there's a game to be played, Kenneth Bryan, don't play games. I want to play a reality about my people.
So, quick question, Kenneth. Hold on. One quick question. So, as a PPM member, no, I'll ask it. And as a member of a party who's a governing body, and you realize now that all of this stuff is going on, and you have a leader now that is out of touch, and the people are out of luck. The question is now, I'm asking you as a member of the PPM, what are you and the wider PPM membership are going to do about your leader?
Honestly, Chris, I wish I could answer that question, because I don't even know. I haven't been in contact with the executive. I don't know what's going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm forced out of the membership of the PPM, because I am going to hold Alan McLaughlin accountable for his behavior, not only in my case, but for many other things that I had to keep my mouth shut because I didn't approve of his decisions. There's many of the things that he has to realize that the poor class people who I represent are suffering through. And to be honest with you, I am going to continue to love the PPM, the executive, and its membership, even if they throw me to the side, regardless. And I hope that I can get this resolved, because at the end of the day, I do not want this administration to be in any instability as a result of any conflict between myself and the Premier and his actions. But the truth has to be told, and I am going to continue to tell the truth as long as God is watching me, because God brought me this far, and he's going to continue to take me further. That being said, all I intend to do is I don't want the public to think that I'm going anywhere, because I'm going to stand strong, stand by my convictions, and stand for the people of this country, and prepare myself through God that I can be prepared for 2017.
Well, Kenneth, on the contrary, what I've said to you is not a game, I think you probably do not understand what I'm saying to you. What I'm not playing any games, and I don't want you to play any games. What I'm saying to you is pure unadulterated truth, and it's not a
I
game.
understand.
And it's not a game. I just want to let you know, Kenneth, that in a conflict between vanities, he who blows the trumpet the loudest will not usually prevail. That's what I'm trying to say to you. And what I'm trying to say to you, our conventions about brotherhood are not necessarily always the best. That's the kind of philosophy that I would ask you to go and think about. It's not a game I'm talking about.
Kenneth, I have a question, and it relates to your effectiveness, which seems to be the reason for the termination, because the constituency work, his work wasn't being done. Was that a result of the suspension of you, or was it the result of the fact that you could no longer relate to the constituencies as a result of your charges?
Well, this is obviously the big debate, because I suggested and I made the offer to the Premier that I understood how it would look to have one of his members on allegations of charges before the courts and still coming into the government building, because it doesn't set a good precedent for the administration and for him as the leader.
But when you use Mr. McField's argument, the presumption of innocence until proven guilty, there's a strong argument to say, until
I agree with that, but I have to agree with what the Premier's assessment of the situation is.
Okay.
He's a very peculiar person. He protects his image in every sense of the word. So I gave him the benefit of the doubt in regards to that. So I said, okay, I've accepted quite kindly to say, I've put on required leave, and I suggested to him, I said, why not make me work from outside of the building, where it's not a conflict of interest? Because by no means am I going away from my people. I see my people every day, regardless of on required leave or not. So I'm still feeling my people's pain, still contacting them, and I'm still assisting, even if it's not in my role. I'm not going to stop. So my suggestion to him was, why not work outside of the building and still get the job done? Because he knows that I'm not going to go away. He knows that Georgetown is still going to be my home and the people that I love. So that's not a legitimate argument, and that's what I'm concerned about. He's trying to portray to the people that I was unable to deal with the constituency matters because of these charges, and that's the farthest thing from the truth. He made it. He wants the people to believe that this is a political thing. He thinks that I'm a liability to his administration because how maybe some people in society may view this. The fact is, most people in society, I hope, are seeing this, that our young man stood up for what was right and will continue to stand up for the people of this country. And I'm hoping that, let me tell you something, I have to win this case. I have to win this case, because if I don't win this case, he will be right in every sense of the word. And that's why I hope my people stand beside me going through this, moving forward, because the case itself is an example of standing for what's right. And in these times, we have to stand for what's right, regardless of what side you're on.
Well, one of the things that you want to ensure with that is that you have good legal representation,
Yes.
to fight it. That's going to
But
be
you see that-
important.
Well,
That's another way they will fight and get you down, because they know that I don't come from a rich family. I don't have a big home, and to bring a QC down to fight my battles, I don't have that option. I may actually have the opportunity now to go apply for legal aid now that they fired or released me from my job. So I'm hoping that the Chief Justice will allow that. So I intend to put an application in sometime next week to see if I can have as much representation that I need to make sure that this case is resolved properly and in justice for the people of this country.
Well, let me tell you something, Kenneth. A similar situation happened in Jamaica a long time ago to a gentleman called McGann, a young politician. And then he was in court, and I can't remember what party he was, a PPM or PNP or for the Labour. And when he went to court that morning and they say, who represents him? 15 lawyers got up and say, we represent him. So I hope that the brotherhood in which you speak, I understand that they have a lot of legal support. I hope that when your case comes on, that they are going to stand up in court and say, we represent Kenneth.
Okay. Kenneth,
Well, I just want to say one thing. You're a great ambassador to your party. I was attempting to pull you. I was attempting to pull him out a little bit earlier, but no. And I tell you what, and I have to give credit where credit is due, is that there is a problem within the PPM, which is not the PPM itself, but I mean, obviously with the leadership. And I wanted to see exactly where his headspace was, and to his credit, I mean, he gave the process. Some of my best friends, family members, and everything are members of the PPM, and there are some very good people within that party. So I'm not going to sit back and use one leader to judge the entire party. So Kenneth, well done, and I wish that the convictions that you have were a little bit more inside the elected arm of the PPM, but sadly that is not the case. But my friend, well done, well said, and just keep strong, as Steve said, and God bless you and your mother.
Thank you.
All right, Kenneth, thanks a lot.
I know you have a show to do, so I'll leave you there. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to say my piece in regards to what's happening with me. And God bless all three of you men, and have a good show, okay?
Thank you very much. It was our pleasure. Thank you very much. We're going
Hold
to
on, I want to say, sorry.
Okay,
I just want to say one thing, doing, and this brings together a really bigger issue. I've always been perplexed as to when the political arm is coming on these shows, they're bringing civil servants with them. And I've always wondered what's the use of having a political assistant who's there to help provide some of these, but yet you turn around, you bring the civil servants, and then you expose them within a political arena.
They're usually there to provide more factual, information as opposed to their views.
But when you're a politician, you're supposed to come out and take your licks. You can't be hiding behind the civil servant. I've seen many of them deflected to the civil servant, and it's kind of really hard to hold them feet to the fire, knowing that there's a civil servant that could be caught in a crossfire.
Well, if you're a smart civil servant, you don't get caught in
you're a smart civil servant. No, but that's something that they should stop doing.
They're the technocrats, so they have to rely on them. We're going to go to a quick commercial break, and then we're going to have a wrap up after that, and the show will have to continue again next Friday, maybe, gentlemen. Please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Stuart Connor. My guest in the studio with me this morning, we have Mr. A. Steve McField, prominent local attorney, and Mr. Christopher Saunders, CPA and political activist. Just quickly before we do the wrap-up, gentlemen, I want to look at the political appointment system in Hong Kong. And, of course, Hong Kong is now ruled by China, but before that it was British colony, or not a protectorate, a colony. And in Hong Kong, the political appointment system is a scheme that was introduced in 2008 by the Hong Kong government to reinforce its ministerial team by superseding the principal officials accountability system, which is basically the civil service system. It inserted 2 layers of politically appointed officials below the post of secretary, which is the secretary is similar to having a secretary of defense, secretary of commerce in the United States and stuff like that. So they 2 layers of political appointed officials below secretaries who are political appointees. These appointees report only to the secretaries. That is in our case would be to the ministers. But not the permanent secretaries, the highest ranking civil service. The appointments of undersecretaries and political assistants is an extension of the previous RPAs that was initially confined to principal officials. Prior to the introduction, there were 14 political appointees, 3 secretaries of departments, and 11 directors of the bureau. So again, the political appointment system, as far as additional support for ministers and for leaders of government, is not something new. Despite what we see happen in Cayman, despite the criticisms of some that it is extra money government, despite the criticism of some that it may be political patronage, it is a system that I believe that needs to be in place, because the separation between necessary. Civil servants and political political appointments and the work that they do, that separation must be there. I'll let the both of you use that as your wrap up.
Well, let me look at our Constitution. Our Constitution states that the Attorney General is the legal advisor to the government. Now, what does that mean to the government? But we know, and we have seen, where the government and the head of state differs, that the Attorney General's allegiance is to the head of state to give them the legal advice, and the government has to go out and to get separate advice from the public. Now, in those other countries where the person who is to become the legal advisor to the government is usually elected, he's a member of the party. He's not a civil servant. And the head of state has their own advisors and their own. In this illustration, I'm using their law, their own legal advisors, and the government has the Attorney General who advises them. So we have this anomaly in Cayman that is brought out by the Constitution, where the role of the person who's supposed to be advising the government legally is the Attorney General, who has to also advise the head of state, and the two advice might that advice that both of them might not be
May conflict.
might conflict. And so the government here is forced to have advice different from that of the Attorney General might give them, so that they can have an independent advice, so that they can make up their mind politically of what they want to do. Now in America, it's quite different. In America, the president chooses his advisors, and they're not part of any government. None of his cabinet are part of the government. They are his. He leaves with them. He comes in with them. He chooses who he wants and leaves with them, because there was something the other day where you were saying, well, why wasn't this job advertised? The job doesn't have to be advertised. It's a personal. It's a job personal to the leader.
And in the United States, if he does choose someone who's within the party and a serving member of the Congress, that person then resigns their position.
Resigns their position.
Yeah.
Better separation.
So more so, the political head of the government needs advisors more so than any other country, because of how our constitution is set up. More so.
Chris, you get the final word beside what I'm going to say after.
No, that's fine. No, I think this is definitely something that we need to look into a little bit more further. It goes to show, I guess, our level of maturity as a democracy, or in some cases, immaturity. Running a country isn't easy. And I can tell you, even in the previous government where I spent a lot of time in the background, as with Mr. McFeel, in terms of doing research, writing speeches and, helping different stuff. It is not easy. Sometimes when you think you solve one problem, there's another problem. And it's continuous. That's just the way it is. And this is why more now than ever, we need to have a participative democracy as opposed to just the sole representative democracy we've had in the past. People need to be involved. Now we have the technology to do so. More people need to do so. The one thing for me, I guess I was a little bit saddened with, and going back to the same system, is when, the excuse was given that, I'm not able to service my constituency. First and foremost, before you're a minister, you're an MLA. It is those people that elect you. That is not something that could be delegated to any political assistant. That is something that you yourself as premier needs to do. And one of the things, I've seen it in the previous government with Mr. Bush. He took on a lot of ministries. I've seen the same thing now with Mr. McLaughlin. He has taken on a lot of ministries. So the question is, and just like any organization, if the chief executive is doing so much work, who is in essence is managing the team? Because the team needs to be managed. Ultimately, you have an agenda that you need to push. You have a manifesto that you need to push. And this is exactly why the agenda isn't being pushed. You're busy running ministries and departments. You're delegating your job as a representative to your political assistant. And the ministers are basically getting frustrated and everything is going all over the place. And that is the kind of system that needs to stop.
In the United States, you don't see the president
but you look at David Cameron.
Any ministry.
David Cameron has the responsibility for being the minister of the civil service and I think First Lord of the Treasury. And which is actually, that is his role. Outside of that, everything else is different cabinet members, and then he manages them. And I think in this situation, you have councillors, you have all these ministers, and yet the premier still has the largest ministry, even with 11 of 13 people within the government to basically run the country. Almost twice what the UDP had, literally. and you're still, I mean, struggling at this point. I
And
mean,
if you're premier and you have all those ministries, and if you do something right, you're not going to fire yourself from, and say,
Exactly.
let
So,
me
I mean,
remove this portfolio
yeah,
from me
and-
because I'm not doing a good job.
And people need to understand that from where I sit, regardless of whatever the choices was, this is also my government. I want them to do well. I'm not going to sit back. I mean, as I was running one joke with one of my PPM friends, I want you guys to do a good job up to about maybe 2 months before the elections. But you want them to succeed. You want them to do well. And it's kind of frustrating sometimes when you see them slipping like this, making simple mistake. And as Kenneth rightfully said, people are suffering. Their inaction or action or inaction results in people suffering. You listen to John in terms of what's going on. That's a simple solution. But once again, you have special interest that controls the government. The poor people are basically struggling and continue to suffer. And these people sit down, and what people need to realize, and I will say this, and some people may not like it, for 4 years, up to maybe out of the 1,440 days, whatever, between elections, the business people generally or the special interests is what run the country. And it's only during that election time where the politician come out looking at a valuable piece of X to go back and just repeat the process as usual. I've never seen a country where so many people have done absolutely nothing, have a track record of doing nothing, and yet topping the polls in districts after district from doing nothing. I mean, this needs to stop. And in Kenneth's case, I think it's just ultimately an embarrassment. Here's one young man out there that is defending the modesty of a woman in parties, inside a party where a lot of their elected people, but I wish it's not a lot, but a couple of them are known for not defending the modesty of a woman. And I won't get into details because people out there know what I'm talking about, and I don't want to raise up the old wife beating issue and woman beating issue again, so I'll just leave it at that.
Folks, you've been listening to For the Record. I've been your host, Dorrit Connor, and my guest in the studio with me this morning, we had Mr. Alan Steve McFeel, prominent local attorney who has to be in court soon. And Chris says, he's running away from the courts while Mr. McFeel is running towards
I hope
the
I
courts.
never need a
but
service.
of course, for different reasons. So Mr. McFeel has to be in court soon. But again, I want to thank you for allowing For the Record into your homes, into your offices, your workplaces, into your automobiles as you traverse the roads of the Cayman Islands getting into work. We apologize for any inconveniences that may have been caused you this morning by your inability to access our streaming audio, and we hope that Lime will have that sorted out fairly soon. And for those of you who are overseas, if you're still able to hear me, again, we apologize for that. And we invite you to rejoin us again on Monday morning when we will have someone from the government here. Whether or not we'll be talking about the political assistance situation or not, we will have someone from the government and we'll be talking about something. I don't have the schedule in front of me, so I can't tell you exactly whom, but I can assure you someone will be here. And I want to remind you that we are our brothers and our sisters' keepers. And when I say that, I really mean that seriously. There is always someone out there who's less fortunate than we are, or who has found themselves on hard times simply because of a particular incident or instance. And I ask you to hold out a helping hand to them. And if you can't do that, then you should donate to worthy charities who contribute greatly to our society and to those people who are in need. We should always think about those who need and not about those who want. I say to you, have a great weekend. Stay safe. Continue to listen to Radio Cayman. Join Sterling Dwayne Ebanks at 12 noon for Talk Today. And continue to listen to the great radio station, your radio station, Radio Cayman. God bless.
Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record.